Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. We're going to make some deviled eggs. And deviled eggs are something that's pretty simple, but you probably could find 100 different recipes. And I think deviled eggs are one of those things that you make them until you find the one you like, and then you become known for your deviled eggs because they're yours and they're just not quite like anyone else's. So I'm just basically going to talk about the process and how I make deviled eggs, knowing that you can make any kind of alterations and changes to it that you like. I'm going to start out with the eggs. I did another video, and I will put an annotation here so that you can easily find it. These are eggs from our backyard chickens. They're 1 or maybe 2 days old. And if you have backyard chickens, or if you're lucky enough that to buy eggs from someone who does have either chicken farm or backyard chickens, and you know that really fresh eggs don't peel nicely usually. If you don't use backyard eggs, or really fresh eggs, and you're boiling eggs from the grocery store, then you probably don't have any trouble at all. But those of you who really use really fresh eggs know what I mean. So I want you to look at these. These are pretty darn close to perfect. I boiled 10 and I have 10 to use. There's a little nick in 1 or 2 of them, but not bad, and I'll take that into account when I cut. I have a video on how I do this. I don't boil them, I steam them, and I'll put the annotation so you can check it. So, whoops, dropping things. So, to make my boiled eggs, to make my deviled eggs, I start out, have a small bowl here. Let me get things right. And of course you cut them long ways, and I use a sharp knife. And I want you to look at these steamed eggs. There's no dark circle around the yolk, and that's one of the reasons for doing it. I don't know if you even ever noticed what I'm talking about, but a dark circle around the yolk when you boil eggs generally, and when you take it out, then it leaves a dark circle. But if you'll see, these steamed eggs don't. So that's one of the reasons I love doing it this way. Sue Dutra told me how to do this. She's my chicken mentor. And we always steam our eggs now. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and slice all of these and empty them out, and we'll come back. Okay, I'm almost done here. So I'll take this opportunity just to tell you a couple of things. We talk a lot about sort of our journey toward being from scratch cooks, and deviled eggs sort of gives us an opportunity to talk about that, because deviled eggs are one of those things that you can make them totally from scratch, or you can make them partly from scratch. I mean, you can go all the way down to growing the grain to feed the chickens, I guess, but I don't go that far. But a lot of folks say they don't cook from scratch, or and they do more so than most folks, or folks think they cook from scratch and they actually use more ingredients that are prepared than they think. But my sort of philosophy about cooking from scratch is do as much as you can. Nobody in today's world, hardly anybody in today's world, cooks everything totally from scratch. So I'll talk about the different options as we go. But if you buy your pickles or buy your mayonnaise, don't sweat it. Don't feel guilty if you can't make everything totally from one ingredient. Almost no one else does either. But the more you can use from scratch, the fewer ingredients, processed ingredients you use, the healthier and better tasting your food's going to be. So here I have the egg whites sliced. This plate generally holds about 10. And no, this is not a deviled egg plate. This is my grandmother's cake plate. And I use it for deviled eggs just because I think it's pretty. And usually my 10 fit pretty closely in there. And 10 is what I usually make because that's what my steamer will hold. So here we have the egg yolks. And I'm going to mash those up a little. And the first ingredient, the first ingredients that we're going to use are the onions and celery. And I'm going to put a little insert here to show you how I cut those up. Once again, forgive the noise. It just dawned on me. I'm getting ready to make these deviled eggs. And someone asked me the other day to show proper knife technique. And I asserted strongly that I'm not the one to do that. I'm not sure I use a knife correctly. But I do have a way that I use it, and I'm going to show it to you. We want some very, very finely minced celery in our deviled eggs, and some finely minced onion, because we're talking about a small piece of food. We don't want anything big chunks in it. So I cut it. This is a half, and then I halved it again, so these are quarters. And then I use a chef's knife and I rock it. You have to keep your knife sharp to do this. And Fred keeps my knives pretty darn sharp. I always think about the scene in the movie Julie and Julia, where Julia Child was learning to chop onions, and I will never be able to do that. I'm not going to try, mostly because most of the onions would be in the floor. But a long time ago, I learned the rocking motion to finely mince vegetables. And there you go. I'll do a little bit of onion too, just to show you that. Really finely minced onion, I usually start with a slice. Cut it in half. Cut it again. And then just do the rocking motion. Watch your thumb. And if you're listening to me in a video and I tell you shaved onion, this is what I mean, because I'm just barely shaving off a tiny little bit each time my knife goes. And then I'll give it some final chops. And so we have, my little cart's making a knot. So we have very finely minced onion, or I call it shaved onion. So there you go, Paulette. Okay, that was for Paulette Porters, who asked me to do a demonstration on using the knife. And I'll try to think to do that in other videos occasionally, even though I am not an expert. Okay, so I have mashed these up. They're very light and fluffy, partly because of the way they were steamed. And I have here about 2 tablespoons full of shaved onions. Very, very finely minced, as I just showed you. I have here probably a little bit less, probably 1 tablespoonful of celery. And I have here some of my homemade lime pickles. And I'll put the link to some things, but this one, I don't have a YouTube video on this, but you can find it at my blog, Debbie's Back Porch on WordPress, how to make lime pickles. And these are spicy and kosher. Kosher dills. So we're going to mix that in. And I'm going to put about a half teaspoonful of salt. If I taste it and want more, I can do that, but I'm going to start with a half teaspoon of salt. And then I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon, just a tiny little bit, maybe just an eighth, of red pepper flakes. You can use black pepper if you prefer. Okay. Now I'm not going to tell you how much mayonnaise to use. I have another video that shows you how to make homemade mayonnaise. You don't have to use homemade mayonnaise. You can use store-bought mayonnaise. Think about Duke's if you can get it. And this may actually not be enough, and I may end up opening a jar of store-bought mayonnaise to finish this up. But check my video, especially if you have access to a lot of eggs. It's a good way to use up eggs to make your mayonnaise from them. And it's yummy. But I think that's going to be enough. Looks about right. Now, 2 things that I don't make from scratch are mustard, even though there are several wonderful recipes for mustard. But I don't do that, and I have here a little Grey Poupon. I'm not going to measure it. You can use any kind of mustard you like. I'm just going to put a squirt. That was probably a half a teaspoon to a teaspoonful. And then another thing that I put in my deviled eggs that I don't make from scratch is I like creamy horseradish. And as I say, I don't make this from scratch, but just a touch of creamy horseradish gives it a lot of flavor. I think that's about right. You want a consistency where they will be easy to handle but stand up, because you've added a lot to this, and so you're going to have to round them up on the eggs. So we'll be back, and I'll be stuffing these eggs. And hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I have here just a little bowl of water and a damp paper towel. I may need them to do this as neatly as I ever do anything. So spoonful if you have one of those great little strainer things so that you can push it out in a pretty pattern, that's wonderful. You should use it. So, the cook's prerogative. I love deviled eggs. Sorry, talking with my mouth full. I'll show you the finished product as soon as I'm done with this. Okay, there we have them, all finished up in my grandmother's plate. I truly have no idea how old that plate is. It's just in my whole memory. That was what my grandmother put cake on. And I almost never make cake, so I use it for deviled eggs. And a lot of folks now sprinkle with paprika. You can do that. I don't actually have any paprika. Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. But I think they're pretty with a little parsley. I love the flavor of parsley. And this can make you proud at any family gathering, at a church social, or a community get-together, or just for dinner. Hope you try them. Thanks for joining us on Debbie's Back Porch. See you again tomorrow.